we discovered a new targeted operation by the StrongPity threat actor.
So Tom, I hear you have some interesting analysis you'd like to share with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Stan. I was just going to quickly talk on some of the new activity we've identified as an attack operation being conducted by the adversary we call StrongPity. To kind of give you some background, StrongPity was first discovered in 2016, and after a few sources publicly outed some of their activity, primarily outside the United States, this adversary made a large effort to rebuild their infrastructure and continue operating their attacks, primarily in Turkey most recently. And historically, this group has done a lot of things like creating watering holes and inline traffic modification to trick their target individuals into downloading malicious versions of trusted software. So what we found was the adversary was supplying targets with new versions of trusted software such as WinRAR or Winbox or a tool called Internet Download Manager. And this has been going on from what we found since about mid-2018 into 2019 up until the last couple of weeks.
Targeting users who are technical by targeting software packages that they might download. And it reminds me that we have to be very careful from where we download the security tools or the IT tools that we use to administer systems we have sensitive access to.
It's pretty interesting because it's a highly targeted approach to attacking individuals, but it gives them software that they're actually specifically asking for, but gives them a malicious version of it. So we don't know a lot exactly about the individuals and what organizations they're a part of or why they're being targeted. But, in my opinion, you can gain a little bit of an insight into who they are just based on the type of software. For example, if you look at older campaigns from the StrongPity actor, they've used modified versions of WinRAR and TrueCrypt. So generally, individuals that are downloading encryption type software, which is like a technically inclined person or a network administration type person. You look at the most recent activity that we found, WinRAR again for file encryption and encoding and so forth. Winbox is a tool to be able to manage large amounts of router OS devices, which is pretty interesting. And then IDM is a download utility to manage large amounts of downloads. So again, it kind of fits the profile of this adversary targeting individuals which are a little bit more technically inclined or network administration type users out in Turkey and so forth. So pretty interesting, but we identified the malware beaconing outbound over SSL, so it makes detecting at the network layer a little bit of a challenge for most organizations. However, one thing that defenders can kind of keep in mind in cases like this is the adversary has historically evolved only as much as ever necessary to evade detections. So we publicly wrote a blog and reported on this. Now we expect that adversary to change up their tactics just enough so if somebody read our blog, they couldn't go and still catch them, but they do just the minimum amount. So it kind of gives you an idea of the type of operation they're running, very efficient to say the least. But we've identified a lot of this activity and wrote up a blog and placed it into Open Threat Exchange and so forth. But generally, it's some interesting new trends from an actor that's been around for quite a while that I think there's more to come here soon around this adversary.
Interesting. Regarding the SSL activity, do these guys reuse SSL certificates, or is there any way to pivot off of that? Or is that one of the ways to track them?
Unfortunately not. They have mostly used the SSL certificates on a very small basis. They haven't really done a lot of overlap or reuse. It's pretty much a one-time SSL cert use, potentially per target or per compromised software version that they deploy outbound. So it doesn't last very long. One of the best tracking mechanisms we found has really just been tracking the malware that they drop and then finding new samples that have been exhibiting the same behavior and then analyzing the infrastructure at that point where they'll be out, and then it can kind of connect some links. So not a ton of clues on that front, but enough to kind of get us started and map out a good bit of their activity, which is pretty much how we found them here.
It's interesting to me the targeting around well-known software packages that technically inclined people might use, and it reminds me that we, as technical people, have to also be careful where we download things and that we're getting them from proper sources. You just always have to remember that. Actually, it reminds me a while back. You can download things from different like SourceForge and things like that. There's a lot of like freeware available, but sometimes these websites have advertisements that have always looked suspicious to me, because the advertisement says, download here, and you came to this website to download something, and I always wonder, what is this advertisement really taking you to? And you have to, even on something legitimate where you're getting freeware, you have to be very careful.
And I think especially for smaller and medium organizations, right, who tend to use the free tools, the network admin wants to test out probably a different tool, right? So, and most of them do not track sort of behavior analysis and, cannot spot this behavior. So I think it's also interesting that this group is relentless, right? From 2016 or so, they've been tweaking their techniques a little bit to go undetected. I think, one of the key reasons why we do these stories is to sort of bring to front that this may be applicable to you, sort of keep an eye out, it's not impacting just yet, but in the future it may, right?
This reminds me, as security professionals or IT professionals, we have to be very cognizant of where we download things, that they're from trusted sources.